Welcome to Stoughton Spotlight. I'm your host, Jeffrey Pickette. We're continuing our Conversations with the Candidates series, where I'll be interviewing the residents running in the contested races in this April's town election. On this program, I'm interviewing one of the candidates for the Board of Selectmen. There are 6 candidates running in this April's town election season for 2 seats on the board. So I'm joined today by John Semerjian. John?
Hi, Jeffrey.
Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me.
And let's just start off by having you introduce yourself to the voters and telling us why you decided to jump into this race.
Yeah, of course. So I lived in Stoughton all my life, graduated from Stoughton High in 2009, and I've always been passionate about giving back to the community. Formerly on the events committee and currently on the Friends of Stoughton Center Beautification Committee, it's a passion of mine to give back to the town that I live in. With the different events that we used to hold for the town on the events committee and the ideas and what we've brought to life in downtown Stoughton and the revitalization of that has kind of given me the additional nudge that I want to do a little bit more. And I think Selectmen definitely is something that does that. And that's the path that I want to go down by being able to share my passion to the rest of the community.
Now, you're only 25 years old, and a lot of the people running for selectmen are maybe twice your age. So what, as such a, having so much youth, do you feel that that's a challenge that you're going to have to face, like convincing voters that, look, I'm mature enough, I'm experienced enough to do this? Like, how does that kind of add a different layer to the experience being the youngest candidate?
Yeah, that's actually a great question and something that I've thought about a lot during this. There is a major void, I could say, of a millennial generation represented in government, not just in Stoughton, but all over, as you can see. And I think a lot of people have become more involved in government or interested to see what it's all about after the recent election for president this year. I'm going out because I believe that the millennial generation has a lot to offer in terms of government. And yes, there is a void of that knowledge, but I'm being able to kind of fill that gap. I've been able to speak to a lot of the students that I graduated school with, a lot of students as friends and friends of mine that have never ever thought about, running for government or being involved. So not only during this journey do I seek to, provide my ideas as a selectman, but also to increase the knowledge of what a government official or figure looks like to get others involved. And not only am I going through this transition to look to become selectman, but also to get out a huge population of voters that have never voted before, mainly a younger generation or the millennials. So I'm excited to see our numbers for the election this April be much higher than they were before because of my ability to connect with those that have never voted before to see what it's all about.
And that's certainly the case where maybe only 15% of the residents who are registered turn out in these town elections. So what's your strategy to do that, to get a larger voter turnout?
Social media has been huge. And as you can see with all the different things on social media, of all the different awarenesses and different things that go on in the world, it's been easy to connect with people on a much larger scale than going door to door or sending phone calls or just placing a sign in someone's lawn. By going on social media, you're able to connect to hundreds of people at the same time and have the ability to instantly respond to them with their questions or concerns. And fortunately, groups on Facebook have been tremendous in supporting that. Being able to reach out to my entire 2009 class by going on Facebook, being able to reach out to the 2008 class, and making the connections that I've had with them so they can connect to their family, which quadruples the number of people that may have never voted before, and bringing the awareness of what I stand for and how I can help and what the challenges and situations we face in this town will largely improve the numbers of voters that we have, and I'm excited for that for this election.
Well, let's talk about your vision and what you hope to do over the next 3 years if elected.
Right. So I think there is a lot of hit the ground running, and a lot of people have a a broad vision, right? They want to do this, that, the other thing, and they want to do a lot in a short period of time. And unfortunately, I don't believe that's reality. I think you really have to pinpoint what your strong points are and what is necessary to the town. My focus is during the next 3 years, public safety and education, simply put. Nothing else at this time. As situations arise, then yeah, we'll add that to the plate. But right now, public safety, getting public safety staffing levels to where they should be, and education, ensuring that we have one of the best education systems in the Commonwealth. You can't have a great public safety building or public safety personnel if we don't have a great education system. And we can't have a great town if we don't have both. So my commitment is to ensure that we have both a well-staffed police department, fire department, and a great running school system to be able to be proud of the town that we live in and enable others who are looking to start and grow families to choose Stoughton over others.
Now, how would you fund that, though? Because it's those two kind of compete. I don't want to say compete, but they're going after the same pot of money. Everybody's pulling from the same pot of money, and it's limited. Yeah. So to add public safety, to continue to grow education, how do you make that work from a dollars and cents standpoint?
Yeah, another great question. So right now, majority of our ambulances runs are from out of town. We have 1 or 2 operating during a shift, 2 at most. And anytime we need additional help, we'll contact neighboring towns, Avon, Canton, Easton. And when those towns are called over to us, we don't receive the money from insurance to pay for that. The town that responds does. So in order for us to get back to where we need to go, by adding an additional ambulance, we'll increase our revenue from that public safety, from the insurance. That additional revenue is not there right now. That's huge. Being able to make money on every single run that the town can do, that doesn't do, is a large portion of the money that we're missing that will be able to fund additional fire and police and add an additional ambulance.
Now, what about the public safety building itself? There's been a lot of talk about trying to add a public safety building, a joint one with the police and fire, and the Freeman Street Fire Station is in pretty much disrepair. So what's your stance there, and what needs to be done in that regard?
Yeah, that's something that definitely needs to be handled and act on quickly. I think we in this town enjoy dragging our feet on certain things, and that's not something that I intend to do, and it's not something I do in my personal or professional life. We need to evaluate the situation, right? So the situation on Freeman Street is completely deplorable. We all know that. But what have we done to fix that? And the situation at the police station is that we're investing all of this money in fixes for the HVAC unit. The windows don't open. The station's too small. We need to figure out an actual cost-effective plan that will pave the road for the future. Do I think a new fire station at this time is needed? Yeah, definitely, especially on Freeman Street. Do I think it's beneficial to conjoin the two and have an entire public safety building similar to Norwood, if that's going to be cost-effective in the future? And yeah, maybe there's a higher upfront cost, but saves us money down the road, then I'm definitely for that as well. I think we like to jump the gun and say, hey, we need a new public safety building. Oh, well, we can't afford that right now. So let's table that and let's just focus on repairs in the fire station. That doesn't solve the long-term problem. That invests money, millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, into a building that's already wicked old, right? So that doesn't solve the problem. It's a temporary fix. But by planning for the future, that will enable us to save money in the long run. And that's the vision that I have, is making sure that we're making smart decisions that save us in the long run, even if there's a higher upfront cost. Because if we drag our feet, that's when the costs go higher.
Now, I've seen you attending a lot of the Selectmen meetings recently, and what's your takeaway from the Selectmen meetings? What have you observed? What's your thoughts on the way the board is operating at this current moment?
That's great that you asked me that, because I pride myself on being able to go to all of the Selectmen meetings, as many as I can. Because if I am voted Selectman, those are the meetings that I need to attend. So I think it's crucial for all running mates to go to these meetings, even if they are night meetings, which most of them are. But if you want to run and become a selectman, the best way to understand what a meeting is about is by physically going to those meetings. And I've been fortunate to go to many of them. Haven't been able to go to all, but definitely most. And it's given me a great gauge of perspective on how the meeting and how each selectman runs. And I think we can all say that many meetings are kind of all over the place, as a lack of a better term, all over the place. And everyone has their own agenda, I would like to say. And I think that if I was to be able to join the Board of Selectmen, I would definitely call a meeting amongst all of us and prioritize the needs of the town and go from there. Being able to chip away at what's most important and then go down that list so we can see accomplishments by what we want to do will give us and the town satisfaction on knowing that we're doing things right, not for us, but for our town.
Well, do you feel that there's certain processes, certain issues in town that have kind of been dragged out over the course of time? For example, the police chief search, it took 10 months.
Yeah.
How would you handle a situation like that, maybe differently, more expeditiously?
I think that a lot of times people don't understand how government works. And being on the events committee and being on the Friends of Stoughton Center Beautification Committee, unfortunately, government has a process, and it does take time. Should the police chief search taken as long as it had? No, it shouldn't have taken a year. Could it have been cut shorter? Of course, but only by a few months. It's a long process that nobody wants to endure, but it's just the way of government. Am I satisfied with their selection of police chief? Most definitely. Donna had did a great job as interim police chief for that year, and there is no other person that I believe should have filled that role other than her. And I'm happy to see her in that role. Would I have done anything different in that process? I would have searched for alternative ways to speed up that process. Maybe instead of waiting until January to get that police chief, we had it done by winter, August, September, October. But I don't really think it could have been done any sooner. Because of the procurement process and different ways of interviewing, it does take time.
One of the other issues that the Board of Selectmen will be dealing with is the town manager situation, where the board has decided not to renew the current town manager's contract, and it expires at the end of the fiscal year. A new Board of Selectmen, new members of the board, will be asked to deal with that situation. So, one, would you be in favor of either hiring back this town manager, extending his contract, or are you looking to start anew and look from the outside?
So I think the question and the way that the board decided on that vote a couple months ago was smart. Reason being is that gives us the opportunity to search for a new town manager if we must choose to do so. If not, Michael Hartman has the ability to reapply and potentially remain the town manager for the town of Stoughton. Now, am I in favor or not favor for Michael Hartman? I'm not sure at this time. Indifferent. I don't know Michael well enough, and I plan on meeting him and getting to know him a little bit more. That will be able to give me a more definitive answer on that question. If I was to join the Board of Selectmen today, would I keep him on as the town manager? Most likely, yes. However, I can't say that as a definitive answer because I don't know him. But I think that the vote that was made at that meeting to be able to search for an additional candidate and have Michael be able to reapply was one of the smartest decisions the board could have made at that time.
Is there a drawback, though, where it creates a lame duck term, for lack of a better phrase?
Yeah, it could, definitely. And, I never want to see someone in business know whether or not they're going to have a job the next day. But that is, these types of jobs, they're all contract, they're all certain year terms. And if it's a specific term, then by at the end of that term that the light of the tunnel might be there. But I think it gives them hope on being able to be chosen again, which is exciting Because if he's going to continue the great work that he's done so far, then let's keep him on our board. But if a new group of selectmen joins the board and they're not aware or happy with his performance, then they can act accordingly, that gives them the opportunity to go both ways.
Oh, what's your opinion, or just will be your practice in terms of reviewing the town manager, whoever the town manager may be? Because the town manager, this current one, has not received a review for quite some time. So how much of a priority will it be when you're on the board to see that through?
Yeah, that was actually completely shocking to me. I've been I think the only candidate right now that has been able and fortunate to meet with each selectman face to face and have conversations about why I want to run for selectman and being able to gauge their perspective. And I pride myself on that because that's something that I've done on my own that I can't say others have. And while meeting others, I've been able to definitely gather information from each other that would have been able to provide me with information that I haven't had. Now, in terms of running the board and different agendas and the town manager, it'll be difficult to see what happens, but I'm excited to be able to have that information that gives me a competitive edge on knowing where other selectmen stand on certain topics and ideas.
Sure, but in terms of reviewing somebody,
yes.
do you feel that it's important to carry out that duty?
Oh, yeah. Going back to what I originally said, one of the statements by Bob O'Regan that I met with was that there has been no review of the town manager. And my jaw dropped to the floor, you could say. Baffling completely. In any business, government, retail store, whatever, there has to be a review process to be able to, able to hold someone accountable, or B, let them know what they're doing great at and let them know what they need opportunity at. And if someone doesn't get that review that they deserve, then there's no need for improvement. There's no drive to do better because they don't know what they're doing wrong and what they are doing outstanding at. If I was Board of Selectmen, one of my first items on that list of priorities that I mentioned would be to implement a process to not only review the town manager, but to make sure that the town manager has a process to review every department head, and every department head has a process to review every employee. That's something that should have been in place years ago, not something that should be going into effect now. Being able to review our commander-in-chief for the town manager, as the town manager, is crucial to not only his success, but to the development of our town and where we see ourselves in the future. So that's something that is definitely important and something that I will definitely strive for. And I don't find that should be annually. I think that should be twice a year.
So another issue that you've brought up, or just mentioning that your involvement in the Downtown Friends of Stoughton Center Beautification Committee. So let's talk about downtown a little bit. What can the Board of Selectmen do to spur the catchphrase of downtown revitalization that seems to get brought up every election season?
Yeah, so I think that the Board of Selectmen definitely have a certain limitation. Even though they are street commissioners, we do have to find the appropriate funds to do such work. We have a great town engineer, Mark Tisdale, who has done countless projects in this town that have looked outstanding, with different sidewalk improvements, intersection improvements, and a planned improvement for Stoughton Center, which should be happening this spring, with different curbing and different lanes in Stoughton Center that should increase the traffic flow. However, that's a short-term solution and not a long-term fix. In order to get people living downtown, in order to get people walking the streets and going to different stores and coffee shops and restaurants, we need a lot more than just a reconfiguration of a road. Something like that is a study that takes a while. Our economic developer, Pam McCarthy, has been doing a great job with a restaurant survey in seeing what residents want to see downtown. The newest building on the corner of Monk Street and Washington Street, the Drake, has been able to give an opportunity for people to live in downtown. If you live in that building, you can walk to Price Right, you can walk to CVS, you can walk to Avocados or the House of Brews, the train station, the post office. There's not many buildings in Stoughton Center where you can do that. with the Malcolm and Parsons building and the new building that's being built on Porter Street next to the police station and the train station, that will enable more people to live down there. But we need more housing downtown for more people to do that. From there, we need a park. We need a common. There's been a lot of talks about moving the post office, building a parking garage, pushing the fence back on the church in Stoughton Center, so that park or that field in front of the church is now incorporated in the town center. Has anything been done? I'm not sure, but it takes time. But that is definitely something, again, that needs to be addressed. Because if we pride ourselves on the town that we live in, and we have a great school system, and we have an A-plus public safety building and public safety personnel, but we have a downtown that's old, decrepit, and depressed, it doesn't give this town the recognition that it deserves and that it needs because of the way it looks.
And you mentioned parking. So let's talk about that a little bit and the need for it in the downtown and where you would fill that need.
So there is a lot on Rose Street that is the municipal parking lot that is available for use during the day if there's no spots. There is the train station that is available on weekends when no trains are operated. There is a lot in front of the former Pacheco Hardware that is 90% of the time not always filled. There's spots along Stoughton Center Streets, Park Street, Washington Street, and on side roads as well, Wyman, Porter, on both sides. And I can tell you that 90% of the time, those spots are not all filled. You can always find a spot. Parallel parking is definitely more common downtown than any other type of parking, and that may be a challenge for most people. But I don't see parking as a big problem right now. Name a downtown that has a lot of shops that has a big parking garage. Look at Quincy Center. They just got rid of their parking garage and adding countless apartments to that downtown area. The focus is to get people to utilize public transportation more and utilize that, as well as being able to have ample parking spaces to attend these businesses. Look at the House of Brews. There's no dedicated parking lot for the House of Brews, but they're always busy. They're a thriving business, one of the most successful businesses in downtown. So a need for a parking garage, yeah, that'd be great. But the feasibility of having it, would it be used to its fullest potential? I don't think so.
So in the last few minutes, let's talk about the inner workings of the board itself and the importance of being able to bridge gaps maybe between factions on the board and keeping relations at a cordial level. So how important is that, and what can you do to make sure that happens and that the factions don't split and stop talking to one another?
I think a major portion of that issue is lack of knowledge in regards to the town charter. Now, that is something that I have been working on diligently on reading the entire town charter, because I believe it's in my best interest to do so, especially as a candidate or a potential selectman for the town. And I think there's a lot of, can we do that? Is this allowed? Is this okay? And as a Board of Selectmen, I want to be that person that'll be able to provide that answer. Or if I'm going to make a motion, it's going to be something within reason that we have the ability to do. And the lack of knowledge piece, I think, is one of the biggest. You know, I commend the 5 selectmen that are on the board right now, because those are 5 individuals who take their time out of their day to volunteer for our town. And I am super excited for this election because there are multiple candidates running for different offices, which shows that there are people that are interested in the town. One thing that really boils my blood is when people badmouth or bash current Board of Selectmen. And yeah, there are things that are said, things that are done that could have been handled differently. However, if you're going to complain and if you're going to say this person should have done that thing, then I would love to hear that. Say it at a citizen's comments during a meeting and bring it to our attention. But don't say something about someone where they don't have the ability to defend themselves. Or even better, if you're so passionate about it like we are, then run for office and get your name on there and get yourself a seat on the Board of Selectmen so you can put your ideas to work. And that's what a great community is all about, is being able to share ideas to better ourselves. But to go back, the Board of Selectmen right now, I commend them for taking the time out of their day to run for office and to do what they do, because it's not an easy job and it's a lot of work. But the difference in opinions and the differences in attitudes on the board, I think a lot of that has to do with the lack of knowledge in the town charter. Do things get out of hand where people become very passionate about something and maybe their voice gets raised a little bit and an argument happens? Yeah. Is that a bad thing? Not necessarily. Should they have raised their voice? No. But the reason that they're getting so hot and so uptight is because it's something that they're really passionate about, and that's something that I really love. Because there's someone on the board that really cares, and they're not doing it just for the title of Selectman of the town of Stoughton.
What about the length of meetings? Meetings can go sometimes up, 3+ hours. Is that something, and they're, pretty frequent too. Is that something that you would look to change, or is that really not something that just focusing on a number of hours isn't really relevant?
Yeah, I would say most definitely that would be something I'd be looking to change. Right now, meetings generally start around 7 o'clock. Most meetings end between 9 and 10. However, there was a meeting, last meeting, where there was a long agenda, approval of a consent agenda on multiple minutes, differences with the change of water rates. And that meeting lasted well past 10 o'clock. And that meeting started at 7, and they weren't even able to complete the entire agenda that they had for that night because it just went on so far. I would be interested in seeing what the board thought about starting at about 6:30 or maybe even 6 o'clock meeting time. So if these meetings are 3 hours long, they'll end around 9 o'clock, not an unbearable time for us. And if someone's going to come out as a resident like myself to attend a meeting just to learn a little bit more, it's unfair for them to have to stay until 10:30 just to get to that one item on the agenda that they're interested in.
Sure. And while we, not to cut you off, but while time is ticking down in our final, let's say 20 or 30 seconds, speak to the voters and give them a pitch for, why you should be one of their 2 votes for selectmen in April.
Yeah, of course. So I think of all of the different individuals running for office, and I congratulate and commend all of them for what they're doing. However, there is a major void in our town and overall government of a millennial generation in terms of representation. I have multiple ideas in technology, differences of opinions with our improvement on public safety and education, and I can't wait to implement those because I believe that having a millennial or a younger generation board member for the selectmen will enable us to be able to plan for the future, something that is integral and important for the future of Stoughton, and that's something that needs to happen now. So I ask for your vote in order for me to help move the town forward, but in a direction that we can pave the way for the future for our kids' kids, and so on and so forth.
All right, well, thank you, John, so much for joining me today, and thank you for tuning in to this episode of Stoughton Spotlight. I want to thank Gina Coe for directing, and I want to remind you to vote in the April town election. There are many contested races, including one for selectmen, where 6 candidates are vying for 2 spots. So once again, thanks for tuning in.